and you can check him out at LandryFootball.com. I mean, there might be somebody out there that knows as much as Chris Landry about football, but there's nobody that knows more.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. We're so happy to have him on with us. Chris, it's Dave, it's Jason. Good morning. How are you?
Oh,
nope. Hold on. Do we have him?
I am here.
There you are.
Good morning.
That whole intro, and then we didn't have you potted up.
I know. I was saying that I got my Santa Claus outfit on because Christmas is here.
Yes.
Football season is here.
Yes, it really is, and for you, it's a year-round thing. You never stop. I mean, obviously, I'm looking at the site right now at LandryFootball.com, and there's everything you could possibly want when you're talking about previews. You're talking about podcasts, deep dives, all that fun stuff. I want to start asking you, and by the way, let me apologize, listeners. Boy, would that have been big news if Trey Lance had been cut, as I said going into the break. Trey Sermon was cut by the Niners yesterday. Chris, this was a pet project. I loved him at Ohio State. I bring up the Northwestern game all the time when he broke the record. And then when my Niners grabbed him, I thought, oh, my God, this is it. And then a sixth-rounder in Elijah Mitchell ends up taking the job, and they cut this guy a year later. And that, to me, just underlines the difficulty scouts like you and so many others have, where how do you figure out how it translates from an Ohio State to San Francisco or does not?
Well, first of all, I think he's a good back. And I think that we had it on Landry Football. We had kind of a list of guys to not be surprised if they get released about 3 weeks ago, and Trey was on it because I think that in this system, the backs are very fungible. Backs are very fungible to begin with anyway. It has the shortest lifespan in the league, so they're always looking for younger guys that can do similar things or the same thing, or maybe even do it better. And you can't keep enough of those guys, and at some point, you're going to have to allocate a second contract to him. And I just think that they just got into a numbers game. I still think the guy can play. I still think he can be very effective. The other thing is just in this run offense, this very well-schemed run offense, a lot of backs have success. It does not mean that anybody can go and do it, but there are more guys that can be successful as running backs in this system than in most systems because it's very friendly. If you've got good vision, they create a lot of, by scheme, a lot of openings for the run game. So you hear a lot about quarterback friendly, offenses. This is a running back friendly offense.
Chris, to kind of continue on that and tap into your scouting background, the Raiders as well. I mean, they cut a first-round pick, Alex Leatherwood, who didn't play well for them. And I don't know if it's as much a new regime in there or it's an indictment on him. They missed there, too. When a lineman like that goes that high and doesn't work, what happens? Where's the miss there?
The miss was by the previous, people that ran it, the draft for the Raiders. The guy was a good player. He was a third-round pick at best. And, it's just one of those cases where, when you're on TV and people are giving you information to help you do your job, that's one thing. But when you've got to make your call yourself, it exposes your inability to evaluate. That's just a guy that had no business being, drafted that high. And it's not really fair to him because it's like, well, what did he do wrong? What he did wrong was he just got drafted too high. That's not his fault.
Right.
He's a good player. He's a good player and he'll have a chance to play. He's not a guy. He's a guard, probably more than anything. But he's certainly not someone who have been taken that high. And because they threw him in there, look, this new regime's not going to put up with, other people's mistakes. So they're cleaning house, but he'll get another chance. And probably when you take away the whole, well, he's a first-round pick, you need to be great, moniker away from him, the guy will have, I think, a decent career. It's just, he was overdrafted. It's just people that don't know how to draft and are not involved in it. We all make mistakes, but that was one which clearly was people that were running it that had no clue.
Chris Landry joining us. It's funny. We were talking similar thing, Chris, yesterday about that previous regime, and we were going back through their first-round picks, the Cleveland Ferrells of the world and Jonathan Abrams and all these guys with the exception. None of them ended up with that extension, even though Josh Jacobs remains with the team. But the first round record for the Raiders since I want to say 2015-16 was horrible. That being said, in the Cleveland Ferrell draft, they still ended up with Crosby, Renfro, and Jacobs, who all made Pro Bowls. So my question again to you, as somebody who's actually been there, I'm not going to ask you if drafting in the later rounds is easier, but does the draft severely change for scouts, after the second or third round, where it opens up a little bit for those successes?
Well, it depends on the situation. Like in the Raiders, those guys you mentioned, those were the coaches making the calls on that.
Gotcha.
They were the guys, and the guys at the top were the personnel guy, again, that was a little inexperienced. So they listened to the coaches a little bit more about,
sure,
who to go. And look, I mean, it happens. I think that we're seeing more and more guys that maybe get a job. And this is just my belief. And of course I'm biased because I come from a coaching and scouting background, but I believe if you're going to be a GM, I think someone with a coaching and scouting background, and by that, not talking about it on TV, but actually having coached the game at this level, scouted for years at this level, and it takes a lot of experience. I don't care who you are, sports talk show host, lawyer, accountant. I mean, you are thrown into a business that you're not qualified for to make decisions. It's going to be very, very difficult to have success. In fact, it's almost just by happenstance when you have it. I think that has a lot to do with it. We're seeing more and more guys that are not from a football background get in that business, but the ones that get away with it are ones that just listen to their coaches a little bit more, which is fine. But I like to say, let's all go in our room and study players and let's debate it. But everybody that's being in the debate session has to be people that know what they're talking about and not just influenced by what a coach says. I always tell my coaches this, and always tell my scouts this. I don't want telephone scouts. I don't want guys that try to check with their buddies. Let me go see what the running back coach thinks and what the defensive line coach thinks. And all of a sudden you got that doesn't do any good. That's just, I wanted people that can sit there and say, I see him this way, even if it's different than the way we all see him, because then I want to be able to go in and as a group look and make decisions. Groupthink has to be with people that really can think as it relates to football. I think that's what separates the good organizations from the bad ones. We all know who they are. And that's the difference in why, they've had some success with the Max Crosby because, that was the guy that the coach really liked and they pushed him. And so it works out. But, you've got to have more than just relying upon one individual position coach. You've got to have people that think and see the game in a similar way and understand it the same way. And there's a respect level between them. And that was a big part of the problem, I know, with the Raiders and the past regime was coaches didn't respect the GM who had no football background, and that's the problem. That's always a problem when you have it that way.
Chris Landry joining us, LandryFootball.com. A ton of stuff on that website. Got to check it out. Not only NFL, but certainly college. And Chris, first full weekend of college this weekend gives us two matchups of top 11 teams. The surprise to me there is that, you got Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Oregon, Georgia. Both, Ohio State and Georgia in this case, favored by 2 touchdowns plus. Are those matchups that lopsided?
I think that they probably are, but I would, buyer beware if you're thinking about the game in those terms. That first game of the year, those games might be a little bit closer, at least for a stretch, than people might think. I would think, I'm not suggesting people do this, but if you're going to put down Diet Coke on those games, I'd just be thinking that might be a little bit closer first game. But I think that Oregon is really good line of scrimmage team. I don't think they have the playmakers. I think Georgia pulls away in the second half. I think Ohio State is far more athletic than Notre Dame, more explosive. But I do think Notre Dame physically at the line of scrimmage can hang with Ohio State after a while. And Ohio State, I think it's big that they're at home, but particularly on the road, but just in general, home or away, in early games like this have not fared as well. So Lots expected of Ohio State. Lots expected of the improvement of their defense with their new defense coordinator, Jim Knowles. And I expect them to win. I expect them maybe to win going away in the second half. But I'm kind of thinking more like, I'd be more comfortable with like a 13-14 rather than 17. But who knows? I do like Ohio State and Georgia in those games. So
Chris Landry with us. Last one, 15 years ago today. 15 years ago today. 31-point underdog Appalachian State.
Oh, wow.
Goes into the Big House and takes out Michigan. Listen, top of your head, Chris, but you've forgotten more about college football than most of us will ever know. Is that number one? Where is that rank for you? And I mean, gosh, are we ever going to see anything like that again?
You know what else was, and how's this for a good start? You guys are in the media business, TV, radio. That was the opening game, first game ever on the Big Ten Network. How's that for a
splash?
Because you get those games and you say, oh yeah, the good games over there, but we got to go with the lopsided games. And boom, they had the game that you just did it 15 years ago. We're talking about it. It's one of the big upsets. I do think, point spread wise, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember, but wasn't the Stanford upset, Jim Harbaugh Stanford upset of number one USC? I think that was maybe just as big of a point spread upset. But that in terms of Appalachian State, Michigan in the Big House, I just think the setting of that probably will. We think about that game. We talk about that game a lot. So it certainly is in that pantheon of big upsets.
Hey, Jason, you want to know why Chris Landry is such a special guest?
Why is that?
2007, Stanford Cardinal beat USC 24-23, despite USC being favored by 41 points.
Wow.
41 points.
41.
Oh my God, yeah. 41. And I don't think Michigan was a 41-point favorite.
Probably not.
No.
Yeah, because if you remember that Michigan team, that was Lloyd Carr's last year.
Yep.
And they were a good team. It's Appalachian State, Michigan. It sounds, but I can remember because that wasn't just a USC team. That was a big time, great.
Yep.
No one can stop them USC team, and the Stanford team. That was before Jim got it rolling. That was huge. That was one of those. Okay. I didn't remember it was 40 points.
41 points. Well, you get nuggets like that. You're just top of his head, and he grabbed it 10 points more than Appalachian State was the dog right there. Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com if you really want to listen to somebody that knows what the heck they're talking about. Chris, we always appreciate you. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, you guys enjoy the weekend kickoff of college football, and we'll hope to talk to you guys again soon. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Thank you. That is Chris Landry, and we were way late for a break. Always fun to talk to him.